go live now to Regent Park, where mayoral candidate Josh Matlow is making a housing announcement.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Matlow, and I'm running for mayor because I believe a better Toronto is possible. We all want a city that works, that's safe, that's affordable, and livable. And one of the most important things that we can do, one of our top priorities as a city, is to ensure that everyone has access to a roof over their head that they can afford. And our city has become far too expensive for young people who can no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods that they might have grown up in, and older adults who want to be able to age at home in their communities. Too many Torontonians are spending so much of their annual income on their rent or their mortgage that they've got very little left for groceries or anything else. Rents keep going up through the roof. Home ownership for too many people is a dream that they are giving up on. And I hear stories all the time from people that are not only giving up on that dream of home ownership, but in some cases leaving our city. And we see that happening more and more. That can't go on. Toronto's signature affordable housing plan, Housing Now, was announced 6 years ago, and it's been a failure, very sadly. Today, there's still not a single shovel in the ground, and that's not good enough. And for over 10,000 Torontonians experiencing homelessness, some of our most vulnerable, not only has the city not addressed the affordable housing crisis well enough, there have been votes at council where council wouldn't even do the bare minimum to ensure that if people are freezing outside or burning outside, that they have a safe place to go to be protected in shelter. So it's time for Toronto to set a completely new direction on how sincere and genuine we are about addressing the affordable housing crisis. The housing plan that I'm announcing today is comprehensive, addresses rental, addresses home ownership and providing more options, and addresses the homelessness crisis. It's a comprehensive plan that will invest over $400 million to create great places and healthy places to live, to lower the cost of housing, and to support homeless Torontonians. We have a responsibility to do so. So first of all, let's change the development planning process. We're going to fix this by providing better services and more options throughout our neighborhoods. Instead of having battles over every single application for a new building, we're going to be planning communities, getting stakeholders involved, getting industry involved, getting experts involved, getting our planners involved, to map out what a community should look like when heights and densities and services, parks and infrastructure should be predictable for everyone. We're going to be making sure that we achieve our targets for things like school capacity, childcare, pipes and wires, and social services. And we're also going to be mandating more community space on the ground floor of large buildings being built. Instead of having unnecessary struggles over the height of buildings on our avenues, we're going to be providing as of right of 9 stories on our avenues to start building Paris where Paris should be. We're going to not only approve 9-story buildings as of right on avenues, but we're going to get rid of the restrictions on the necessity of having terrace step-backs or those pyramid requirements that unnecessarily restrict the number of housing units. We're going to be reviewing the density and height limits on all major streets. We're going to be providing options for up to 3 rental units on existing homes so that a homeowner can choose to bring an income that allows them to age in place. We're also going to allow it to be faster and cheaper for as-of-right zoning for up to 4 units, and we're going to be providing a dedicated team at City Hall, architects, lawyers, and planners to speed up those applications. So for example, if you own a home in your neighborhood, you want to age in your community, you don't need to go to a long-term care home. You may want to have one unit as your home, your kids in another unit in your house, and then somebody else being able to live in a unit in your home that they wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. We're going to encourage construction of purpose-built rental. We need more rental in the marketplace by shifting the property tax classification from multi-unit residential to lower residential units. We're going to meet or exceed the targets for building along major transit station areas. And we're going to fast-track development applications that provide meaningful benefits to our communities, including affordable housing. If you're a developer that wants to leave this place better than you found it, we have a responsibility to work with you to make sure that happens. We're going to reduce the cost of housing. We're going to double the land transfer tax on secondary homes that are used as solely investment properties. That's not going to include joint tenancy for your kids, for example. But if somebody's just holding on to a property solely as an investment property, we're going to make it more difficult to do so. We need to make sure that we address the financialization of housing. We're going to request an investigation by the Toronto Police Service to investigate money laundering in the housing market. There have been reports that have shown that there's roughly $30 billion in Ontario that go through money laundering. That's not acceptable. Houses should be homes, not some use for criminals. We're going to double the number of bylaw officers dedicated to investigating illegal Airbnb and other short-term rentals. We're going to advocate to the federal government to address real estate investment trust, REITs, that allow for apartment buildings to be bought and sold solely as commodities rather than being treated as homes. And as I recently announced, I'm going to be investing $51.5 million into a tenant support program. We're going to be stabilizing the market by acquiring more multi-unit buildings through MURA. We're going to be establishing rent control on all new units being built on city properties. We're going to stand up for tenant rights. When Doug Ford removes rent control on all new units, we're going to ensure that rent control is on units being built on city lands, and we're going to fight to have better rules when it comes to above the guideline rent increases that impose unfair and surprise rent increases on tenants. And we're going to crack down on fraudulent evictions and the worst landlords. We also need to ensure that our homeless population have homes. The best way to fix the homelessness emergency is to ensure that the homeless have homes. We're going to create 2,000 new rental supplements and expand the qualifying criteria to help more people who are homeless transition to full-time, stable housing. We're going to do something different than the last council. We're going to open up a year-round respite instead of opening warming centers during extreme cold weather. It's going to be hot this summer. There should be predictable places open 24/7 for people who don't have roofs over their heads to be safe, to be healthy. This isn't just about housing. This is about saving lives. We also need to start improving the standards in Toronto's shelter system. You know, a lot of homeless tell us that even though City Hall often says that they should go to safe indoor spaces, they don't feel safe in those indoor spaces, and we need to improve. We're going to increase funding to the Toronto Drop-In Network for immediate access to meals and showers and other support. And we're going to increase outreach to the homeless to ensure that they have the care and support they need. Now, the reason that many homeless say that they'd rather be on our streets and in our parks is because many of our shelters have 3 a.m. bed checks. They're not allowed to eat food in their rooms, and they're often thrown into a room with a complete stranger where they don't feel safe for their body or their property. We need to up our standards to make sure that they are safe environments for people to be there, rather than go and take a violent and inhumane approach to remove people from spaces that they're simply trying to find refuge in. Now, I believe that a better Toronto is possible with realistic plans to demonstrate how we're going to propose them. And as you will see, I have not only a fully costed plan, but I also demonstrate how we're going to pay for everything that I am determined to do. In summary, housing should be a right. Every Torontonian should have access to having a roof over their head. But housing can't just be about people who want to own a home, and it can't be about people who struggle with their rent, and it can't just be about another conversation about homelessness. Housing is about all of us. It's about ensuring that whether you're struggling to own a home, you can't make the rent, or you're living in the streets and parks, everyone has the focus and attention that they deserve by their mayor. That's the mayor that I am determined to be. Thank you. And I'm happy to take your questions. So what I'm going to tell you first of all is that I'm not going to pretend that the provincial government is going to upload the Gardiner and the DVP because they just told us that they're not going to do it. We can't base our proposals on that. I also am going to be negotiating with all levels of government for a new deal for Toronto to finally see the provincial government and federal government do their part when it comes to housing, social assistance, transit operating costs, and so much more. But I'm not going to pretend that Doug Ford has done anything to indicate that he's going to come and be our friend and help out Toronto in any meaningful way. And that's why we need to get our own house in order. That's why I announced a City Works Fund, that there's going to be a 2% dedicated property tax that's going to go toward improving our services. That's $67 a year for the average homeowner, or only $5.55 a month, a fraction of what it takes to pay for Netflix. I think our city is worth investing in. I'm also going to be providing a corporate parking lot levy that's going to be part of our climate action plan. That's going to be going toward everything from housing to transit to the many services that we need to both improve our environment and support what we don't have today. I also announced that I'm not going to be, while there has to be a plan to rebuild the Gardiner in one way, shape, or form because it's crumbling, I'm going to be putting it on the ground rather than elevate it. That will save minimum $568 million that can go toward housing. These are the kind of things that responsible governments do when governments don't have enough money to meet the needs of their residents. I'm not going to, unlike other candidates, pretend that we can just make things up or produce streets paved with golds or unicorns because they want to get elected.
That's mayoral candidate Josh Matlow in the Regent Park neighborhood talking about a housing announcement if he's elected.